Hard to believe, but SEAT are around 75 years. And you might have been wondering over the last few years, are Cupra taking over SEAT or Volkswagen Group hanging on to SEAT? The answer to that question is no, they're not, and yes, they are. So the revised Ibiza is here, along with the Arona, and we're here in Ibiza in beautiful Spain to have a look at the car. Despite being almost the end of October, it's still roasting. And this red colour really pops in this Ibiza sunshine today. So let me show you around some of the key changes in the car. We'll take the petrol version of it for a drive. There's a couple of options there. You can get an automatic gearbox, a manual, or a 4-cylinder or a 3-cylinder engine. There's quite a decent lineup actually, and there will be more electrified cars coming from SEAT over the next 2 or 3 years. So on the front of the Ibiza now, there's a slightly revised grille with some new textures on it. These new headlights are quite different to before. SEAT say the output from these lights, particularly in high beam, is 3 times better than the outgoing Ibiza model. And just the standard spread and throw for the headlights on the standard setting is twice as good as it was before, so that's welcome. New air curtains over the side of the car and a couple of creases in the bonnet. And we got a look today at the evolution of the Ibiza model. They actually had one of the first gen here in Spain at the Event Hotel, which looks really, really nice. It was just interesting to see the different models of Ibiza change over the years. Still a very, very good looking car. So there's a whole load of new alloy wheels now available for the Ibiza, ranging from 15-inch up to 18-inch if you like. And if you go for the F4 trim version, there's going to be 3 different trims. You'll get a 2-tone roof or indeed an opening glass sunroof if you wish. This top of the shoulder, or as SEAT are calling it, the new blister, double blister, just kind of completes the new side profile of the car as well. So you would still recognize it as an Ibiza. It's not radically different, but some nice changes to it as well to refresh the lineup. I've been talking about it for a long time. I did a recent video about the Golf. I am a big fan of these smaller cars. We have so many 2-ton electric SUVs. Isn't it refreshing to have something a little bit different and a bit more compact? SEAT also say the average customer for their cars is nearly 10 years younger than the average customer for another VW Group product. So it's still a brand that captures the younger and the ones of us who wish we were younger. So while this is the top trim F4, and I'm still not seeing a huge big protruding boot spoiler, the entry trims now will just be named after the models. So Ibiza will be entry trim and Arona will be the entry trim. They have revised some of the rear details in the car as well. Kind of a lower valance here, some little changes, little grooves in the bottom of it. Certain models seem to have a bit of black high gloss, some subtle tweaks to the rear lights, but overall not a massive change. What is remaining is this handle for opening the boot, so you're not fumbling down here for anything. 355 litre boot, a little bit smaller than a Volkswagen Golf for context, a little bit bigger than things like the Renault 5, which you might be considering as well in this segment of car if you're thinking about going fully electric. As you can see here, we've been able to stick in the couple of travel bags that we need. There is quite a big lip for lifting things out of the boot as well if you're not as able-bodied, but yeah, 355 litres in here. And just for ease of closing, there's a couple of handles up here in the back of the boot liner. Wheelbase is 2.564 millimeters, so that is a little bit more squished than your typical sort of crossover SUV. But again, if you don't need all that space, these cars are more fun to drive. You can quote me on that. But still, depending on how tall or not tall your driver is, you'll still have reasonable space. If you do need to push someone who's 6 foot in the front, you're going to have very limited space overall. These are new seats into the lineup as well, particularly in the front. I'll show you them in just a couple of seconds. Nice big deep bucket seats on that. Nice materials that have been used, so they've kind of revised and refreshed again, which is the whole idea. A decent roof space. Now this car has an opening glass roof on this trim. You're obviously not going to get that on every version of it, but very nice to see a roof that opens in 2025 into 26, because it doesn't always happen. No armrests, wouldn't really expect it in this segment of the car. What is nice though is, so the seat belts, when you drop these rear seats to give yourself a bit of extra space, and it is a 70-30 split like that, you can actually tuck the seat belt away with a little holder inside, so it means they don't get caught and then you're running back around doubling up on yourself. Again, this is the automatic version because it's the 150 4-cylinder engine. Every other model lineup in the engine are 3 cylinders, and you can get some manuals depending, but not, unfortunately, the 150 brake, which is maybe a bit of a shame, but I'm sure the emissions thing is one of the reasons for it. These are the new bucket seats, so they do hold you into place nicely. There's no F4 trim or anything inscribed on the top that you may have seen. It seems to be Cupra that get the extra budget for those nice little touches. You'll also perhaps be surprised to see a handbrake on a modern car, but I do like this sort of DSG style gear shifter, which you haven't seen in a while. The group has reverted to that little nib that you might see in other models, and you can also move the shifter to the right and actually manually engage the gearbox if you want. There's now a faster wireless charging plate. It's 15 watt. It's only okay in terms of speed, but it will help cool the device to stop it overheating. And there's lots of physical buttons for the climate control, which is down here. We have seen these kind of setups from the Skoda Fabia that came out in 2021. In fact, I do think some of these surrounds for the air vents, we've seen them in the Fabia for quite a few years. There's a new dark black going on with the headlining and the dashboard, and plenty more physical buttons on the SEAT steering wheel, although I have noticed they have removed the button that brings you straight to the ADAS settings. On that note, one thing I've noticed, there's now a threshold that you can add. So you want to leave the speed beep on, you can input either a 5 or a 10 kilometer tolerance in it, which means you're probably more likely to leave it on because they can be a little bit annoying. If messing with the gear stick isn't also enough for you, there's also paddles to engage the gear. So they are doing their best to make this feel like a bit of a driver's car. A full leather steering wheel, and obviously there's CarPlay and Android Auto and everything else going on here with the screen. So plenty of updates to the tech and the interior, and I think it still stands up pretty well, even though it has a handbrake. It's funny to be driving an update or a new car, but being so familiar with the powertrain that's driving it. So whether you go for the 1 litre 3-cylinder options, or you go for this 1.5 with the DSG 7-speed gearbox, they're tried and tested formulas. I don't even really need to check to see the fuel consumption in this car because it just doesn't change. So driving around these twisty roads in Ibiza today, we're looking at about 8.5 litres per 100 kilometres, which is not on the most efficient side of things. Now, if I was to be just at a steady cruise on a motorway, might expect to see somewhere like 6.5. If you are specifically after fuel efficiency, you might want to wait till 2027. I know that seems like a long time away for another update. So there will be mild hybrid versions of the Ibiza and the Arona in 2027. Just gone over a couple of rumble strips there, which is a reminder to tell you that the wheel size go from 15 to 18 inch. Obviously the 18s will aesthetically look better. The 15s might be a little bit lost in the arches of the car, because actually I don't even think the 18s look like 18-inch wheels on this car, but you will have that trade-off of a little bit more style over comfort and vice versa if you were to go for the 15-inch wheels. I also find there's a little bit of hesitancy there when you boot down the accelerator. The engine will step up a gear and come into life, but there's plenty of power if you need to overtake things and whatever else. You know, this would be the hottest version equivalent of as much as you're going to get in a Ibiza these days, with 150 brake horsepower, which is loads for this segment of car. Skoda are actually bringing out a 170 brake horsepower version of the Fabia. Well, I presume be a little bit dearer than this car, but I just thought it was kind of interesting that they were getting into that space of, again, a little bit more power into a relatively small car. And are they trying to relive those days of the Fabia RS from all those years ago? I suppose SEAT are doing the same with the F4 trim versions of this car, despite the engine being the 150 only. I thought it was quite interesting today that they really labour the point about how committed they are to SEAT in the future. They've sold almost 200,000 cars so far this year as a brand. And, you know, they were definitely laying out the future and it being very much part of the Volkswagen Group. And they're still working on new models, and there'll be the new Leon by 2029. Now, say it as the overall group versus Cupra, for example, it's a much faster growing brand. Essentially, Spanish people very attached to SEAT. There's no reason from what we were told today for, you know, the brand to disappear. But if you're just looking for an uncomplicated car to get you around that looks pretty stylish, then this newest version of the Ibiza might be something that tickles your fancy. There you have it, the refreshed Ibiza from SEAT. Still a relevant car, I feel. This particular one, a little bit thirsty if you drive it on. Obviously, you can't get the manual gearbox now in the 1.5 TSI with the 150 brake horsepower. You can get the MPI 80 brake horsepower in a manual. A very robust little engine. VW have been using that in cars for a long, long time. Meant to be easier to work on as well. Not something you're obviously going to be too concerned with a brand new car. Space-wise, look, it is a kind of a four-person family car, just about. The boot obviously is a little bit compromised. There's things like the Arona, there's bigger cars from SEAT and Cupra if you do need more space. But if you are someone that just wants a small, kind of nimble and agile, slightly fun car to drive, and does look very well in F4 trim, then, you know, it's not a bad shout. They gave the impression today that there won't be any, or if there are, very, very limited price increases over the last model, which is good to hear in these times of cars getting more and more expensive. Quickly look at it, you might think it's even an Audi with all these sharp lines going on. Let me know what you think. Thank you as always for watching this far into the video, and maybe even watching the ads. It really does help support this fully independent channel. I'll see you next time. Goodbye from Ibiza.